Alan, how are you?
Very good, Ger. Now, and yourself, Eoin, how are you? I'll give you a quick kind of how are you?
So Munster are going to win everything this season. The swashbuckling, the final piece of the jigsaw was Joey Carberry to unleash their backs. That was it. That's all we needed.
Yeah, you're as bad as Adrian Barry now. Every week trying that crack with me. Were Ulster useless or were Munster very good?
Well, both, right?
Yeah,
I mean, both are
look,
definitely true.
To be fair, somebody said to me on Friday, Ulster will, have a right chance of winning in Thomond Park on Saturday. And I didn't see it. I knew there would be. I knew they were better than they were the week before against Cardiff. That was a really poor performance. A strong Munster team, lacking a little bit of cohesion maybe. No need to panic, I said after that. I'm sure they had a big assessment during the week, and probably excuse me, the most frustrating thing for probably a coach or a team that you visually look at is poor defence, because that kind of sets your stall out. Sometimes you can be beaten by a good side, or like Ray Lilo was brilliant for Cardiff that night and he's great footwork and stuff, but some of the defence was really, really poor. So that kind of ensued that there was going to be a reaction, and I think it's just a pity that it was so lopsided that it was great for Munster, but did they get a true test? Were they able to go, where are we at here ahead of this week? But look, you can only play what's in front of you, and I think Johan van Gran I was asked last week, at the European launch, the season was going very well. I think it was Rory O'Connor asked him, and he said, not if you look at last week. So it's hard to assess where they were after that game. They were very impressive. Ulster were missing a lot of players. They're back from the 2-week trip to South Africa, which we've seen before. We've seen last year with teams. It does take it out of you a bit, particularly Munster when they had that semi-final in Racing and stuff. So Munster were very good. Ulster very poor.
Yeah, I mean, like, Ulster giving up 64 points is absolutely ridiculous.
It's a record defeat for them, and it's not something you want to kind of be part of as a player. So there was a couple of new players for Dan McFarlane's side, but they were very, very poor, and it didn't help Ian Henderson going off with a HIA, John Cooney, someone like Henderson. In fairness, we keep things together a little bit, but Carberry was very, very impressive. Keith Earls coming back. Matheson at scrum half was really good. And the forwards reacted as a unit. Niall Scannell, having him back and is a massive boost, because he's an international quality player we saw in Australia. So it was a good performance, really good performance for them, particularly the forwards, but they'll have a different test this week. So I'm sure they'll be pleased. And the challenge now is, how do you learn from those away defeats and make sure they're on the road again, because we saw from the Glasgow one and the Cardiff one, they're really poor. If they go back to the same type of performance against the best team in Europe, Leinster at the moment, and they showed that in Connacht. So it's a real challenge for them. Do they play Joey Carberry? Will Johnny Sexton play? Will there be a bit of rotation with players? I suspect there might be.
No.
I suspect there might be, Ger, because a lot of these guys are back in the Pro 14 a little bit earlier than they normally are. So,
well, that would be ridiculous.
Wait and see.
Is that what you think? Is that what you're hearing is going to happen?
I think there could be a little bit of look. But
so Carberry might not play. Sexton might not play.
I'd say there may be a chance that Sexton may not play. If he plays this one, he's going to play. He has to play the week after in Europe. Probably the week after. So it'll be a run about 5 or 6 games for him on the trot, which is.
It's hugely likely for Munster going to Exeter the following week.
Yeah, I think it's. But Leinster have the ability of playing Ross Byrne and putting Johnny Sexton on the bench, and not really. Obviously there's a difference in the quality, but they still have such a good side and a good squad that they may do that. And Ross Byrne played in teams last year that beat Munster, so don't be surprised if there is a few changes with the Irish guys and there is a bit of rotation. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but I just suspect it may do. But I think, look, Munster will be in. They've got to get form on the road, because you're going away to Leinster, then you're going away to Exeter in Europe, and they're 2 big weeks from.
It's such a fascinating time to watch the form graph of a lot of individual players, and one person is Tommy O'Donnell. Now, obviously, when you talk about poor defence, the first try for Tommy O'Donnell was basically a gimme. It was Darren Cave who slipped off the tackle there in that one, and of course he got a second one on the board. He's been unlucky with injuries in recent seasons. Probably would have been in the mix for 2015. He obviously got injured in the warm-up game before then. And we've kind of forgotten about him because we've got so much depth in that area. Is he potentially in that realm of potential bolter for the World Cup?
He is. He's a very talented player, and he's been so unlucky with injuries. And it's good to see him back. Obviously, Clote is going to put pressure, and there's more competition there for that 7 slot. But he is a really good player, and I think he's been very unlucky. So yeah, if he gets a run of form, there's no reason why he can't. That form has to come in big games, though. If he starts next week against Leinster, if he's playing Van der Fleer, Levy, Sean O'Brien, he's got to step up and mix it in with those guys. Same with Exeter the week after. So you want to play well in the big games, and then you grab that attention. It's hard to judge it for any of the players Saturday night, but he's been so bloody unlucky with injuries, and when he's performed for Ireland and got the chance, he's done well. But there's so much competition there. But it's good to see him kind of getting his confidence back like that.
Yeah, the hip dislocation injury that he has come back from is the type of injury that has ended multiple careers.
Yeah, a hip dislocation is phenomenal. He's had a few shoulder injuries as well, and some guys are a bit more unluckier than others.
Just to go on to the Leinster game, you mentioned Van der Fleer, obviously at the end of a pretty horrific stamp. The type of stuff that you don't see anymore in big time rugby, because it's on camera, and it's like, it's complete madness for anybody to stamp on anybody at the back of a ruck like that on their head. And rightly, he should be facing anything between a 3 to 6 month ban.
Yeah, and probably in my time playing, you've seen that, and Johnny Lacey, the referee, asked, was there any mitigating factors? He was trying to get the angles. So if there's a mitigating factor, it's not going to save him from the red card, but it may save him when he goes into for the hearing. Dominic Robertson McCoy. It was shocking, as you say. You don't see that anymore. Sometimes probably when I played, you'd see a guy, if you're holding a leg, that you'd see him kick out and maybe kick a guy in the shoulder or kick a guy in across the chest or something. But
there's the still footage.
When you get on someone's head like that, I cannot imagine for the life of me that he consciously thought about doing this. It's just a complete reaction, but it's a crazy reaction. And to go near anyone's head, he's going to get heavily punished. And unfortunately for him, maybe now, he's going to get a severe ban here. Thankfully, Josh Van der Fleer wasn't injured, and in fairness, Josh Van der Fleer he's a tough bugger. He came out and said, "Look, it's done. I don't think he intentionally decided to stamp on my head. It was just a reaction thing." And
the scrum cap there, how important was that?
Yeah, it protects the skin from breaking and stuff like that. But geez, I can't remember any game that I've seen that in a long time. You know, it's just not done, and he's going to pay the price and have to try and recover from that. But it's about the player here that, you know, that kind of a scenario just cannot happen, and it should not happen.
But when you were playing, there was still rucking a little bit, but it was
yeah, and it's probably on the body, and
stage.
Nobody's gone off the field with a severe injury. You might have. I had it myself, stamp on the calf, your back, whatever. You go to France, it was.
If you're lying on the ball, but
yeah,
that's at the back of the ruck. The ball's not like.
Yeah, it's not. But I think Josh Van der Fleer has his hand around his leg, but it's still absolutely zero excuse for that. It was really bad.
The Leinster performance, you were saying, was.
Well, you know what it was, Ger. It was robust. It was aggressive. It was physical. They showed a lot of composure, no panic whatsoever, and confidence. There was a few penalties early on. Jack Carty scored a penalty after 2 minutes. That's all Connacht scored in the game. They didn't score for another 78 minutes. And Sexton had a couple of kickable penalties, and they went to the corner. Now, they didn't get scores directly from them. A couple of phases later, he got a couple of penalties, 6-3 at half-time. But you just sensed that Leinster's attitude was totally different from that game last year, and they wanted to avenge that, and they went out with a bit of anger, and they backed it up, really. They were just physically very aggressive against Connacht and just took away their flow. Now, to be fair to Connacht, they never gave up, and they're pretty ferocious in their efforts, and they really tried to mix it physically. But Leinster just have that bit of power, that bit of aggression, and the control from Sexton then was really impressive.
Yeah, they conceded 15 penalties at the weekend, Connacht, and the previous week it was like the swashbuckling style that they perhaps got to know under Pat Lam a small bit, a renaissance of that to a certain extent. Do Leinster just do that to you, where you sort of have to revert to a style that you're perhaps not that au fait with, that you don't want to revert to, I should say? Yeah,
well, they force you into losing your discipline a bit by holding on to the ball so well and being so efficient at the breakdown and just pressure. And then that's the key at that level, at the top level. Who's going to relent under the pressure? And then Connacht did. They didn't roll away. They had hands in rucks. They were pulling down mauls and just making it pretty easy for the referee to give penalties and punish them. And if your discipline is that high, we know particularly from international rugby, the fine margins. And Joe Schmidt is always preaching about keeping that number under 6, 7 in a game. And if your discipline is good, the chances of being on the end of a positive result are very, very, very high. It's rarely, very, very rarely, you'll see a team with up in 15, 16 penalties winning a game. So discipline was an issue for him. And look, I think Andy Friend was very understanding of what happened, and he gave a lot of praise to Leinster afterwards, how good they are and how they put him under pressure. But they just didn't take a couple of opportunities they had and couldn't break down that Leinster defence. And that was probably the big story after the game. They got a try from Ringrose and Larmour, and they could have had 1 or 2 more opportunities, but defensively they were so strong.
I saw somebody saying that the Ringrose Trial was a result of like bad defending from Connacht. I was thinking, it's kind of missing the point. This is exactly how
he does.
He dances and dances and dances and sees a tiny gap and goes through it. And like, there's a break in the Connacht defence there. I'm like, well, okay, fair enough. If that's how you're going to talk about that, but like, I thought it was a little bit of genius.
It was, and he has the ability to do that. And you know what? Even looking at him again this season, I think he's getting stronger. He's looking more powerful, electric on his feet. You think him 2 or 3 years ago as a young kid, 20, 21.
He was scrawny then.
He was a little bit, yeah. So he's filling out and he's getting stronger. He's grown a bit. He looks really, really in good shape now. And I think that little bit of Inderville Bridges, you just can't give him any time and space. And he just spins, dances, goes one way. Super player. I don't know, just the eye test looking at Bundyaki, thinking he looks skinnier, he looks like leaner. He looks way leaner. Yeah, we were saying that last week. He looks really, really lean and fit, and I'd say there's been a massive focus on for whether it's been coming from
the Ireland camp
or the conditioning with Jason Coleman or the management, obviously. But he looks lean. He looks really sharp. He was really good against Scarlets the week before. We were speaking about that. So, some guys trying to put on a few pounds. Some guys trying to lean up, because obviously Bundyaki's a very chunky, blocky guy.
Yeah.
And
there was some suggestion that whether or not he was going to last 90, 95 minutes of game time.
Yeah, and I think since he's gone into the Irish squad, I think he's probably had to change his condition a little bit and got a real taste for that, and looks like he's buying into the international rugby and wants to be part of it going forward. Because look, at the end of the day, the condition is the top guys they're phenomenal. You look at someone like Tyke Furlong as a tight head prop, the work rate, the amount of moments he has in the game, the contributions. If he's carrying an extra 2 stone, he's not been involved in that stuff. He's running around like a back sometimes.
I did hear somebody make the case that he's the best athlete in Irish sport at the moment, that Furlong. Yeah.
Probably goodness, one of those strongman competitions or a triathlon or something like that, but certainly conditioning and fitness at that top level, and Bundyaki looks really, really in good shape.
Sean O'Brien obviously off the bench is the other big news from a Leinster/Ireland perspective, so fingers crossed he's ready to go for the November internationals. Was he a little bit trimmer as well? Is there like a general, this is kind of the trends from the International Rugby Championship. We've seen in recent years that the teams are becoming, so if you put the body weights of the team, the first New Zealand team that won the World Cup after their drought with the last New Zealand team that won the World Cup and the one that's going to win the next one, then there's a definite shift towards more high intensity sprints, like lesser bulk for the scrums, because 8 scrums, 5 scrums over the course of a match versus 20 back in the old days. You want your teams to be able to run and run and run and run.
Yeah, there's been a shift in this kind of mentality, particularly in my time playing in the last few years. So we often had a situation where we wanted to be more fitter, be able to run more. Then there was other seasons where we felt we weren't strong enough, we were being overpowered, and getting that balance right of trying to put on weight or maybe get leaner. I think the ideal scenario is power and fitness now. It's not necessarily about bulk and size. Some guys are just naturally bigger than others. But I think that's changing. That change happened in the last few years, and particularly probably we keep saying the All Blacks. are involved in a lot of this stuff. We watch the way they play, but they're probably the pace setters and set the bar each time. Since the rule came in that you had to show a clear release of the breakdown, it's probably harder to get turnovers, so the rucks are going to be quicker. People's technique at breakdown is much better, so it's harder. You know, we don't see a huge amount of turnovers in games. We see guys getting close.
Yeah.
So that means, obviously, Ger, then that the ball is going to come out quicker. It's going to be in play a little bit more, and the stats and figures have showed that it's in play a little bit longer. So then you adjust to those stats, and that's what teams do. So I think there is more of a push on that leanness and power rather than bulk and size. And particularly the type of way the game has changed a little bit in the last 2 or 3 years, where it is a little bit more expansive because of the criticism maybe at the World Cup that the Southern Hemisphere four more semi-finalists, and maybe it's because of the offloads and the styles we play. So I think all the national teams have tried to change and got fitter and pushed, trying to have that pace. If you go back to Leinster last year over in Exeter, was it something like 45 phases for Jack Conan's try? You know, it's hard to do 45 phases and be that controlled and focused if you're not in super condition.
Yeah. Okay. The Rugby Championship obviously came to, it was won officially by New Zealand at the weekend.
Yeah.
A routine victory for not their strongest team.
Yeah, I was disappointed with Argentina, to be honest, because they showed a lot of promise. Obviously, they beat Argentina in Argentina, or they beat South Africa in Argentina. They gave them a rattle in South Africa, and they gave New Zealand, you know, a good go in New Zealand as well. So I thought this is going to be maybe an 8 or 10 point win for New Zealand, or maybe 4 or 5 point win. I thought they'd give them a scare, but they were competitive. But it just goes to show the depth. You have 4 or 5 guys gone out of the team, first choice players, a couple of injuries, and you know they have an ability to bring guys in who are just a different level. Rico Ioane is just an absolute freak. That's a picture of him there. He's just incredible. He is so quick off the mark, and he's just lethal for him to score. And if he gets any opportunities, so yeah, they've wrapped up the Rugby Championship again, which is a pity. It'd be great to see the cider in South Africa next week, or when they play the South Africa there in Johannesburg. But good win for them, but disappointing result for Argentina and performance probably in the end.
What happened to Australia in this Rugby Championship?
I think they're physically getting beaten up front. They play much too deep behind the gain line. And
would you have anticipated this, having been down in Australia for the month?
No,
watching them play against Ireland?
I wouldn't have. I thought they were, but we've seen a few false stones with Australia over the last couple of years, and they were very optimistic in the summer tour, particularly after the first victory against Ireland, and then probably not so pleased with the second and third tests, and looking for, I wouldn't say excuses, but for reasons to believe that some stuff went against him. The Falau yellow card. I like Michael Cheika a lot, and I think he's very passionate, and sometimes he's a little bit outspoken. But to be fair to South Africa, they've improved a lot, and it was always going to be a tough match for them. But I think it was the New Zealand performances that probably irked the most when you're playing, and then being beaten by Argentina at home. That's probably the last kind of slap for them.
Do you expect them to survive at this point?
At this stage, I think there's no reason why. Why would you change at this stage? No, they might be forced to change. Michael Cheika is a very wealthy man. He said that before. He doesn't need the job for financial reasons. He does it out of passion. Okay, that doesn't excuse results, but I think, I don't know how anyone will change this and bring in what kind of players, because I watch a lot of their Super Rugby teams. To be fair, on paper, they've quite a good side, but I just don't know. I think the players they're not physical enough.
Yeah.
Their discipline is an issue at times. We're talking about the Connacht one. They give away lots of penalties against Ireland.
But doesn't that madness come a bit from Cheika?
Maybe it does, yeah.
You know,
maybe it does. Maybe a change is needed. I don't know. I probably don't know the ins and outs of their whole setup. I know they struggle in Australia, and there's a bit of turmoil going on with playing numbers and players playing league, Aussie rules, all that stuff. So it's not good for the the exposure that they're trying to create there within the game and win fans over. So bad results create a bit of negativity. And I think they have a very talented group of players and a lot of super athletes, but not gelling well together at the moment.
One last question here from a listener. Can we ask Alan what he thinks of the Italian teams this season? Treviso seem to be going well and below the radar.
Very, very pleased. I think they're superb. I think where they probably could struggle is when their internationals are away. So they've played a lot of their internationals throughout the last number of weeks and been very, very competitive. So it's great to see for the Pro 14. The challenge is when November internationals, the Six Nations is on, but
they've been having joint training sessions.
Yeah, they have. Yeah,
like the whole way along.
Yeah, Conor O'Shea's been there, and Michael Bradley is involved as well. So it's brilliant to see, and I think I genuinely would love to see the Italian teams and the Italian national team knocking a few people off their perch and being more competitive. It'd be much better for the Six Nations and the Pro 14. That, you know, it's great to see Benetton. They're up in fourth. So it's and the games they've lost. I think Benetton lost to Edinburgh at the weekend, in Edinburgh, only by a point.
Yeah, their point
Scarlets beat...
point seven is only 21. I mean, you know, with Ulster getting hammered the way they were at the weekend, nobody's calling for Ulster not to be in the competition anymore, but like, bad results happen, it seems, sometimes.
Yeah, they do, yeah, and it can, like we said the week before, 1 week can change the opinion of people.
We'll obviously talk a bit more about the weekend when it's Leinster Munster at the Aviva, but...
You don't care about that game anymore, right? You said the rivalry's dead.
Suddenly Connacht have a chance to go to Belfast and win.
Yeah, it'll be a different Ulster side. Yeah, they have a chance.
This is their, like, they've got to be riding into that going, come on.
Yeah, massive chance for them, for sure. It'll be a different Ulster team. They'll have a lot of guys back.
If Joey Carberry scores 30 points, I'd be delighted for Joey Carberry. Whereas if, like, O'Gara had scored 30 points at the height of the rivalry, I would have been disgusted. That's what happens in these... Anyway, sorry, I interrupted.
You think the rivalry is kind of diluted a bit? It is, yeah.
It
is, yeah. It has. I think it has. And I've covered these games for the last number of years. Obviously played in ones that there was a lot of biting.
Yeah.
So it has changed a little bit. They're all mates now, and they're playing the Irish team together, and they hang around with each other.
You not celebrate a Munster win?
And would I not celebrate? Are you joking? Of course they would, Owen.
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely.
So there's still a rivalry
They're
there.
the best team. Well, they're the best side in Europe, and look, it just depends. Leo Cullen can chop and change. He's so much quality and depth. But it's a good test for I think there'll be a bit of bite in this one, because I think Munster they have to carry a little bit of expectation with them, with Carberry, Byrne, Taute, you know, Botas coming in. They have a few players.
Fully fit team this year compared to the...
Well, they're still down a couple of guys. You know, Chris Farrell is not going to be back for a few more weeks, and Conor Murray, obviously. And but I think hopefully this one's a good one.
Okay. Good stuff, Alan. Thanks very much.
Cheers.